Flowers in anime have a lot of different meanings. Why is that though? We're gonna talk about it. So grab your cup and your flowers and let's talk about anime. Boop. Let's start off with some anime and notable flowers that you're gonna see in anime. We're gonna start off first with the lily flower, also known as yuri in Japan, specifically the white lily flowers that are often shown in anime. But white lilies are specific for their symbol of death. Yeah, they're often given as gifts for funerals, and they're usually around funerals, and that's mostly where you're gonna see them. A good example of white lilies is in the anime One Rank Priority, where in the very first episode we see a really big example, image of a white lily in the foreground, kind of as the main character Ai explores this world that talks about death and leads her to this location where her friend passed away, and white lilies are often shown in the foreground and in the backgrounds and all around to kind of indicate what the world that Ai is entering is all about. Besides this though, in the manga and anime community is this concept that white lilies, which are also known as yuri, are also symbols for lesbian relationships, because lesbian relationships are also known as yuri, specifically in anime and manga culture. There's often this correlation between the two, and I think there's some anime and manga that do play on this as well. There's a whole series I think is called Kiss and the White Lily. Let's talk about what the language of flowers is and what it means. So the language of flowers, also known as Hanakotoba in Japan, is basically this concept that flowers have meanings and they can be used to portray certain concepts and ideas when you either give them to other people or when they're shown on the screen, for example, in anime. Let's talk about where and when Hanakotoba came from. Actually, the language of flowers, or the concept that flowers have a certain language or are, portray certain meanings, is not specific to Japan. It actually existed a long time ago, worldwide. It's been used for flowers all around the world. The concept of flowers having meanings, and in Japan specifically, started around the Meiji period, which is the early 20th century. And Japan adapted this concept of flowers having meanings into their culture. Let's talk about the next flower on this list, which is not related to death, quite the opposite actually, and it is the sunflower, also known as himawari. Sunflowers are often known for their radiance and vibrancy and positivity. Usually going to see this in anime or alongside characters where really positive events are happening, or the character has a really positive personality. So for example, in Fruits Basket, during the ending sequence of season 2, which was the most beautiful ending sequence of all time. I literally love it to pieces. Anyway, the ending sequence shows various scenes where each of the characters are surrounded by certain flowers, and Toru, of course, is surrounded by sunflowers because she is the sunshine of the show. She is the sunshine of everyone's life. And these just really fit her personality well. Another great example of a sunflower is again in One Rank Priority, but basically on Ai's sweater, on the main character's sweater, she has a giant sunflower on her, and as we come to learn during the series, she kind of tries to portray herself as sunny and vibrant. She wears bright colors and she's all kinds of radiance, but on the inside she is not quite like that. Her personality is not actually like that. And again, One Rank Priority just does a great job of showing how things can be deceiving, and especially when it comes to personalities and relating these characters to certain flowers and certain ideas and concepts. Going back to death, destruction, sadness, and even hell, let's talk about the next flower on this list, which is the red spider lily flower, also known as Higginbana in Japanese, also known as the autumnal equinox flower because they bloom on the first day of fall. It has so many different names and so many different meanings that I did not fit all on this list, but we're going to talk about a few of those meanings. Most of them are dark, so be prepared. Higginbana, or red spider lily flowers, usually mean death and have a allusion to death. There's many different reasons why it alludes to death. One is because it blooms in the beginning of fall, which is the start of the season where things are starting to die off, and then winter's coming, so it's a bleak future, bad things are happening. It could be a bad omen as well. There's also the concept of separation, people being separated, either through death or just person to person, just not being together. Also, there's a concept of rebirth, which is slightly more positive, of fall changing to winter and all that, things changing and turning into something else. And there's lots of different speculation why the autumn equinox flower is usually associated with things that are so evil. A lot of it has to do with, the time that it blooms, but also the way it looks, and it like blooms, but then the petals die around it, and then like the inner part of the flower, I guess I can try to show it with this one. Like the inner parts of the flower kind of like stay up, but like the insides, I mean the petals, they roll up and curl and die like really quickly. Since they look like they're dead, maybe that's possibly why. And in a lot of anime that tends to be about like dark dystopian themes and death and violence and all that great stuff, we see this flower a lot. For example, in Tokyo Ghoul, they have lots of different scenes of the red spider lily, which is like beautifully done. I've never seen Tokyo Ghoul, but I saw the parts where the red spider lily showed up. It was gorgeously like shown. It was beautiful, but also very, very disturbing at the same time. Another great example is with Hellgirl. In certain shots before they show her, there is the red spider lily in the foreground or surrounding her or surrounding like different parts and different scenes in the story. And the connections to like hell and death and afterlife are really apparent in that one. Oh yeah, there's also another one which I just remembered right now and I'm so glad I did. In Dororo? In the like 2019 remake of Dororo, they had this entire scene with like Dororo and Dororo's mother and like them passing through it, and you know, it doesn't end well, but there's this beautiful field of red spider lilies alluding to like what's gonna happen with that situation that I'll try not to spoil. Another one that most people probably recognize is in Demon Slayer. At the ending of Demon Slayer, there are red spider lilies in there as well. But next, let's talk about something a little bit more bright, airy, and fun, which is cherry blossoms, or also known as sakura. These flowers grow in early spring, and they have lots of really deep meanings that you probably wouldn't have guessed based off of how often they show up in anime. Like they're in almost every anime I've ever seen, which makes sense because they're a huge, like, just part of Japanese culture. So it just makes sense they're all like sprinkled throughout every anime we've ever known. Cherry blossoms are often shown for new beginnings, so that's why you often see it for characters who are starting like their first day of school in high school or in elementary school, even when they're starting like a new job, like in Agretzko, for example. Cherry blossoms also have a darker meaning, which is just like noticing how brief life is and how short it is, and that nothing lasts forever and that we're all eventually going to die, which is really, really sad. Just like our favorite anime, the world may end one day. So some anime that you're gonna notice cherry blossoms in, like I said before, is literally every single anime ever, but most notably in slice of life anime, which makes sense, you know, closer it is to real life, the more often they're gonna show like real life things like cherry blossoms. Some specific ones that stand out in my mind particularly are, for example, Kimi ni Todoke, because there's this whole scene where the main character is like smiling at cherry blossoms, and the whole romantic connection starts with that, and I thought that was really, really cute. I love Kimi ni Todoke. Anyway, there's also Clannad, which was going to give you more of that like real feels of like, you know, sadness and then things don't last forever and that bad things do happen and nothing lasts. There's also sports anime like Slam Dunk. In the very first episode, you're going to see like, you know, cherry blossoms, surprisingly, for a very macho anime. But another more macho anime that you're gonna see cherry blossoms in, or at least a reference to, is in Bleach, which actually, Byakuya, the way that his Zanpakuto works, it looks like a cherry blossom, and it's like really beautiful and like angelic and stuff like he is. So it just, you know, it matches the characters. Like you see Sakura and cherry blossoms used in a lot of different ways. Before we continue on to the rest, make sure you like this video if you are enjoying it so far. Let me know if you guys like this kind of content and if I should continue making more, and I appreciate it a lot. Let's talk about the next one, which are hydrangeas. Hydrangeas are also known as ajisai. I brought this one up because sometimes it is shown in certain romance anime. One particular romance anime that stands out in my mind that this is shown in is Bloom Into You, which has a lot of flower imagery as well and kind of does a really good job, similar to how Wonder Egg Priority uses flower language to showcase a lot of their like deeper meanings and, you know, darker thoughts and connections to the characters and all that. Bloom Into You is really sweet romance anime, and they show hydrangeas, which usually mean like fond feelings and like positive, like good things, but can also mean like fickleness and like not being close to another person, which kind of goes with the themes of Bloom Into You. Next up, the other one that I said you're gonna find a lot in Demon Slayer is Wisteria, also known as Fuji in Japan. The big purple flowering tree. It's a good demon repellent. So not only is it beautiful, but it will repel demons and keep you safe, which is, you know, I love a flower that has multiple uses. Wisteria is like a really royal type of flower and tree, and it used to be like solely reserved for like royalty in past Japan. And okay, my battery died, so first of all, rude. Like, I was in the middle of a sentence, bro. Anyway, another really interesting example of the use of flower language in the anime is actually in The Promised Neverland, though we will never talk about that terrible, terrible second season and whatever it was that happened in that season. In the first season, which was, you know, great and made everyone fall in love with it, there is a vampiric flower called Vidar that is like a made-up flower actually for the show, where the demons use it to like suck the blood out of whatever they're going to eat. You know, it has like super dark connotations. Like a lot of these flowers on this list, surprisingly. I don't know why I chose all of the really scary ones, but yeah. They were definitely the most interesting though. The Vidar flower that's used in The Promised Neverland does kind of resemble another flower known as geranium, which I could not find the Japanese like name for, but geraniums are also known for like just like connections and like separation and things like that. So it's interesting how that kind of plays along with each of the characters in that show and what they're going through. Well, when used correctly, in anime, they do a great job of showcasing like complex character emotions, like in Wonder Egg Priority, or just complex ideas such as death and life and rebirth, like with the, you know, red spider lilies. But flowers are just one of the major symbols in anime. Let me know your interpretations of all different kinds of stuff more that anime throws out. Learn about that I actually talked about in another video, which you can find over here. Please go watch that. This has been the Anime Tea. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!